Have you ever stopped to think about this? There were songs your mother sang to you hundreds of times when you were little. Songs that calmed you, comforted you, and helped you fall asleep. You heard them again and again. They were part of your life. And now, you can't remember a single one. Why? Why does your mind hide the earliest part of your life? Most people think the answer is obvious. They assume you were simply too young, that your brain was still blank, that nothing was really being stored yet. But that is not the real answer, because the truth is far stranger than that. Your earliest years were not empty. You were already living, already feeling, already learning. You recognized voices, you responded to touch, you built attachments, you reacted to patterns, you experienced comfort, fear, hunger, warmth, and presence. Your life had already begun. So the real question is not why nothing was there. The real question is this: if you lived through it all, where did it go? Why can't you remember being that child? Why does your life seem to begin in the middle, as if the first chapter was torn out before you ever had the chance to read it? Psychologists have a name for this. It is called infantile amnesia, and for a long time people thought that name explained everything. But it only described the mystery. It did not solve it, because babies can remember. That is what makes this so unsettling. Research has shown that even very young infants are capable of learning from experience and holding on to information for a period of time. They can recognize patterns. They can connect actions with outcomes. They can retain what they have learned, at least temporarily. So your baby brain was not empty. It was not passive, and it was not failing. In fact, it may have been doing exactly what it was designed to do, just not in the way people imagine. Part of the answer lies deep inside the brain, in a structure called the hippocampus. This is one of the key systems involved in forming memories you can later revisit, the kind of memory where you remember a place, a face, a moment, and recognize that it happened to you. That kind of memory does not appear fully formed. It depends on a system that takes time to develop. In adults, the hippocampus works together with other brain regions to turn lived experience into stable autobiographical memory. But in very early childhood, that system is still under construction. The circuits are immature, the connections are incomplete. The brain can process experience, but it cannot preserve it the same way an adult brain can. That already explains part of the mystery, but not all of it. Because if the explanation were only that the memory system was immature, this question would not feel so strange. What makes it strange is the possibility that your earliest memories were not simply weak, but overwritten. In the first years of life, your brain is growing at a speed it will never match again. New neurons are being created at an extraordinary rate. New pathways are forming, new circuits are integrating. The architecture of the mind is constantly being rebuilt. And that growth is essential. It's what allows the brain to develop into the powerful system you use today. But some researchers have suggested that this same process may come with a cost. When the brain is rapidly building itself, it may also be disrupting the very circuits that were holding early memories in place. In other words, the process of becoming more capable may also be the process that erases what came before. Think about that for a second. Your earliest memories may not be missing because your brain failed to record them. They may be missing because your brain was changing too fast to keep them. It was building new rooms so quickly that the old ones could not survive. The system was not broken. It was under construction, and what it built came at the expense of what it could keep. That alone is enough to make the subject unsettling, but there is another layer, and in some ways it's even stranger. Because memory is not just about storing events, it's also about knowing who those events belong to. A true autobiographical memory is not just an image or a sensation, it's a story centered around a self. I was there, I felt that happened to me. But very early in life, that stable sense of self is still emerging. There is experience, yes, there is emotion, there is reaction, there is perception, but the inner narrator you now experience as me is not fully formed yet, and that matters. Because if there is no stable self to anchor an experience to, then that experience may never become a memory in the way you understand memory now. Something happened, but it was not yet organized into personal history. It was lived, but without fully becoming part of a story. That may be one of the deepest reasons your earliest years feel inaccessible. Not just because the memories faded, but because the version of you who could claim them had not fully arrived yet. The child was real, the experiences were real, but the self that now looks backward and says, "That was me," was still being built. Same body, same wife, but not yet the same mind. And then comes one more piece of the puzzle: language. Before language, your life was still full of experience, but it was a different kind of experience. It was sensory, immediate, unfiltered. Warmth, sound, rhythm, faces, fear, comfort, presence. But language does something extraordinary. It gives structure to experience. It separates one event from another. It gives memory order. It gives life narrative shape. Words allow the mind to say, "This happened, then this happened, and it happened to me." Without that structure, experience can still leave an emotional trace, but it may not survive as a retrievable memory. It exists in feeling, not in story. And that may be why memory changes so dramatically once children begin to speak, remember, describe, and retell. Language doesn't just help us express memory, it helps build the kind of memory we can keep. So when you ask why you can't remember those songs your mother sang to you, the answer is not simple. It's not just that you were too young, it's that several things were happening at once. Your memory system was still developing. Your brain was rewriting itself at an extraordinary speed. Your sense of self was still emerging, and your experiences had not yet been fully shaped by language into lasting personal narrative. It was not one missing key, it was an entire system in transition. And every human being who has ever lived passed through it. Every person you know has an invisible gap at the beginning of their life, a hidden world they once lived inside, but can no longer enter. That's why this mystery feels so personal, because it's not about forgetting a random detail, it's about losing access to the earliest version of yourself. A version that once existed, a version that heard those songs, felt that comfort, lived in that world, and then disappeared behind the architecture of a growing mind. So why does your mind hide the earliest part of your life? Maybe it's not hiding it at all. Maybe it's what your brain had to sacrifice in order to become what it is now. Your earliest mind did not vanish because it was unimportant. It vanished because your brain was doing something even more important than remembering. It was becoming you.